He entered the throne room alone, but the princess gave him power. Every wall was lined with panels that glowed with a soft blue light, pulsing faintly as though alive. The air was dense and metallic, carrying the faint scent of machinery and ozone. Despite the heavy security protocols, Kale's mind remained calm. He had trained for this moment, and every step he took was measured, deliberate, and precise. He paused briefly at a junction, listening to the rhythmic steps of the alien guards in the distance. Their bodies were tall, sleek, and impossibly precise. Kale had studied them for months, learning their routines, their weaknesses, the subtle gaps in their patrols. Where they were programmed for perfection, he thrived on improvisation. Humans were unpredictable, and that unpredictability had always been his greatest weapon. One wrong move from him and it could all end in seconds. But Kale didn't think of fear, he thought of strategy. He moved again, sliding past a security checkpoint without even slowing. The panel that should have detected him never blinked, never sounded an alarm. Kale smiled faintly. A human mind with patience and a few clever tools could outsmart even the most advanced alien technology. He thought about how the Xylers valued logic above all else. They never anticipated cunning born from instinct, emotion, and adaptability. He paused in the shadows of a hallway lined with towering columns, catching his breath, his heart calm but alert. The throne room was close now. The final room, the place where legends said no one dared enter alive. Kale pushed forward, careful to avoid the small, hovering sentinels that patrolled the corridor. Their sensors glowed red, scanning every inch of the hallways for intruders. He ducked behind a support beam and waited for the sentinel to pass, timing his movement with perfect precision. One step, two steps, and then he was clear. A sigh escaped him, though he did not relax completely. Every inch of this palace was alive with watchful eyes, and even a fraction of a second's miscalculation could bring the end of his mission. Finally, he reached the massive doors of the throne room. They were carved from a single piece of black stone, etched with symbols he did not understand. Energy pulses ran through the grooves, forming patterns that shifted and shimmered with light. Kale ran his fingers lightly over the surface, feeling the vibrations of the protective wards beneath. A deep breath, a slight twist of his hand, and the door accepted his presence, sliding open silently with a soft hiss. The throne room sprawled before him, vast and intimidating. The ceiling stretched high into shadow, supported by massive pillars that seemed almost alive. At the far end of the room, elevated on a platform, was the throne itself, a structure of polished metal that seemed to absorb the light around it. Seated upon it was the Princess Zyra. Her posture was straight, regal, and unyielding, yet her eyes were sharp, curious, and intelligent. She was not surprised to see him. That fact alone unsettled Kale slightly, though he kept his expression neutral. Kale stepped forward, feeling the gravity of the moment press against his chest. He was alone. No reinforcements, no weapons, no backup plan. Every instinct screamed caution. The guards who patrolled the throne's vicinity were absent, yet Kale knew this was no oversight. Zyra had allowed him to enter. Why? That question burned in his mind, but he did not speak it aloud. Instead, he moved carefully, aware of every shadow, every angle, every unseen sensor. The princess studied him quietly. Her eyes, a piercing shade of violet, seemed to read not just his movements, but his very thoughts. Kale knew she was powerful, not only in authority, but in intellect. Any rash action could end badly. Yet he sensed something else as well, a subtle acknowledgement, a recognition that he was not like the rest of the intruders she had faced. Humans were rare here, and one who could infiltrate the heart of the Xyler Dominion without detection was rarer still. Kale's voice was calm as he spoke, almost casual. "You were expecting me." Zyra inclined her head slightly. "I was, but I did not expect you to arrive alone. That was bold." Her tone was measured, not hostile, curious almost. Kale noticed the faintest smile tug at the corner of her lips. That small expression told him she respected courage and audacity. It was a dangerous thing to assume in her presence, but Kale's experience had taught him to trust small human instincts when paired with careful observation. "I had no choice," Kale said simply. "No one else could get this far without being caught." Zyra leaned forward slightly, resting her hands lightly on the throne's armrests. "Then you understand the risk. Tell me why you came." Her voice was calm but carried authority, a tone that could bend while yet invite dialogue at the same time. Kale met her gaze steadily. Because someone has to challenge the empire from within, someone has to make a difference. And you, he hesitated, choosing his words with care. You want change too. The princess studied him for a long moment. Then she laughed softly, a sound like metal chimes, clear and sharp. It was a sound that carried both amusement and recognition. Perhaps I do. Perhaps I've been waiting for someone like you, someone human. You are unpredictable in ways my people cannot fully understand. Kale felt a surge of adrenaline. The unpredictability, the very thing that humans were criticized for, had become his greatest strength. Then what do we do? He asked. Zyra's eyes gleamed with a combination of excitement and calculation. We work together. But you must understand, she said, rising gracefully from her throne, the path ahead will not be easy. I cannot give you power in the way you might expect. Not yet. First, you must earn trust. First, you must prove that you are more than just a human capable of sneaking into a throne room. Kale nodded. Then tell me what to do. Zyra gestured for him to follow her. They walked past the throne and into a corridor hidden from the main hall. Kale noticed that the walls here were lined with a network of intricate machinery, wires, and glowing nodes. Zyra moved with purpose, navigating the labyrinth with ease. I have allies, she explained quietly, but we are few. The rest of the council, they would see us destroyed if they knew of my plans. You and I, together, we might change that, but first you must see what you are capable of. Kale's curiosity grew, mingled with anticipation. He had faced danger before, but nothing like this. He had trained for infiltration, combat, and survival, yet this was different. This was strategy at a scale he had never imagined. And at the heart of it was a human advantage that no alien could anticipate: creativity, courage, and adaptability. Zyra stopped before a large observation window, looking out over the palace courtyard below. Alien guards patrolled the area in precise patterns, unaware of their small but potentially devastating vulnerability. Your mission, she said, turning to face him, is to understand the weaknesses of the Empire. Not just the soldiers, but the systems, the routines, the gaps no one else notices. You will report to me, and together we will decide how to use what we find. Kale studied the courtyard, calculating possibilities. Every movement of the guards, every patrol pattern, every piece of surveillance technology could be turned into advantage. This was more than infiltration. This was planning, anticipation, and turning the enemy's strengths against them. He felt alive in a way he had never felt before. And what happens if we fail? Kale asked cautiously. Zyra smiled again, but it was different this time, faintly sad, aware of the stakes. Then we become history. But humans rarely fail when they are determined, and you, Kale, are determined. The weight of her words pressed on him, but it was not fear that he felt. It was focus, clarity, and the spark of purpose. The Empire was vast, ancient, and ruthless. But human determination was something the Xylers could never fully predict. Kale spent the next hours walking with Zyra through the hidden corridors of the palace. He learned about secret communication networks, patrol schedules, and hidden weaknesses in the Xyler defense systems. Every detail fed his mind, every observation became a tool he could use. And throughout it all, Zyra watched him, testing his instincts, gauging his courage, and seeing if he was truly capable of wielding the power she might one day give him. As night fell across the palace, Kale found himself standing once more before the throne room. The vast hall lay empty, silent except for the hum of the machinery. For a moment, he allowed himself to reflect on what had just happened. He had entered alone, unarmed, and survived, not because of skill alone, but because of human ingenuity, intuition, and daring. And now, for the first time, Kale understood that the true challenge had only just begun. He had the attention of the princess. He had a purpose greater than survival, and he had something that no alien could match: the courage to act when others hesitated. The first part of his journey had ended, but the real story was about to begin. Kale knew it, and somewhere deep in the palace, Princess Zyra knew it too. Together, they were about to challenge the might of an empire, and nothing could predict what humans might do when they truly decided to fight. Kale followed Princess Zyra through the hidden corridors of the palace, his mind buzzing with questions. Every corner seemed to hum with potential danger, yet the princess moved with absolute confidence, as if the labyrinth belonged to her alone. Her eyes flicked toward him occasionally, sharp and measuring, but there was no malice in her gaze. Instead, there was recognition, an acknowledgement that he was different, capable of more than the average human or alien might expect. They arrived at a chamber hidden behind a wall of polished metal. The door had no handle, only a small panel etched with symbols that pulsed faintly as Zyra placed her hand against it. Kale watched closely. The door slid open silently, revealing a room that was a strange mix of alien technology and human ingenuity. Devices hummed and glowed with an otherworldly light. Screens displayed patterns he could not fully understand, yet he sensed their purpose immediately. This was a command center, a place where information could be gathered, analyzed, and used to manipulate entire systems. Zyra gestured for him to enter. "This is where I operate in secret," she said quietly. "Where I prepare for what comes next. The Empire has eyes everywhere, Kale. The corridors you walked are only the surface. Everything else is a web of control. And this," she waved at the room, "is how I bend that web to my will." Kale stepped inside, feeling the hum of energy beneath the floor. He ran his fingers along a console, careful not to touch anything that might trigger alarms. "And you want me to help you with this? How?" he asked. Zyra moved to a small pedestal in the center of the room. On it rested a device no larger than his hand, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. "This is an artifact from the oldest part of the galaxy," she explained. "It amplifies what you already have. Strength, intelligence, intuition. It enhances the potential within you. But it will not make you something you are not. That is up to you." Kale studied it cautiously. He had expected danger, deceit, or perhaps a test of skill, but this was something different. The artifact did not glow threateningly, nor did it hum with aggression. Instead, it seemed alive. He could feel it pulling at his mind in subtle ways, whispering possibilities he had never considered. "Are you sure this is safe?" he asked. Zyra's violet eyes held a steady confidence. "Nothing worth doing is ever completely safe. But humans, you have a way of adapting that no one else does. That is why I chose you. That is why I believe you can wield this." Kale hesitated. He had faced countless dangers before, but nothing like this. This was not a weapon he could aim or a lock he could pick. This was power in a form he could barely understand, and it required something more than courage. It required trust. He glanced at Zyra. There was no threat in her expression, only resolve, and somehow that was enough. He extended his hand and touched the artifact. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, a warmth spread through his body. His thoughts sharpened, his senses heightened. He could see patterns in the room, the faint energy flows in the walls, the subtle weaknesses in the machinery. It was not magic. It was knowledge, intuition, and insight amplified. He could feel the potential coursing through him, yet it demanded control. One misstep and the power could overwhelm him. "Focus," Zyra said softly. "You must control it, not be controlled by it." Kale closed his eyes, drawing in a deep breath. He felt the energy settle within him, aligning with his mind and instincts. Slowly, he opened his eyes. The world seemed sharper, every detail clearer. He could sense the flow of energy in the palace, detect weak points in the security systems, and anticipate the movements of the guards as if he had walked these halls 100 times. This is incredible," he whispered. "I can feel everything." Zyra nodded. "And yet power without purpose is nothing. You must use it wisely. The Empire is strong, but it is not infallible. Their systems are brilliant but rigid. They cannot adapt like we can. That is our advantage." For the next several hours, Zyra guided him through exercises designed to test his new abilities. He practiced moving undetected through simulated patrols, deciphering encrypted alien communications, and identifying subtle flaws in complex systems. Every time he succeeded, the artifact responded, enhancing his abilities further. Every time he made a mistake, he felt a small shock of resistance, a reminder that power required discipline. Kale realized something profound. The Xylers relied on perfection, on repetition, on systems that never changed. Humans thrived on uncertainty, on improvisation, on the ability to think beyond rules and patterns. With this artifact, that human strength became exponential. He was no longer just a man sneaking through corridors. He was a force that could challenge an empire from within. As night deepened outside the palace walls, Zyra led him to a balcony overlooking the city. Lights from alien structures glowed like constellations below, and Kale felt a mixture of awe and determination. "You understand why this must happen now," Zyra said. "The Council grows stronger every day. If we do nothing, the Empire will crush every spark of resistance. But together we can ignite a revolution." Kale looked at her, his mind racing with possibilities. "Where do we start?" he asked. "We start small," she replied. "We expose the corruption within the council, weaken their control, and show the people that the empire is not invincible. And we do it without raising alarms. Precision, intelligence, subtlety. That is our weapon." Kale nodded, understanding the gravity of the task. This was not about brute force. It was about strategy, about turning the empire's own strength against itself. The artifact had given him power, but it was his mind, his instincts, and his courage that would determine the outcome. The following days were a whirlwind of preparation. Kale and Zyra worked tirelessly, studying patrol routines, deciphering communications, and identifying potential allies among the alien factions. Kale was amazed by Zyra's ability to see patterns, to predict outcomes, to manipulate information without detection. And yet, he found himself contributing in ways she could not anticipate. Small, intuitive decisions that disrupted schedules, created openings, and sowed subtle confusion among the guards. One evening, as they reviewed the latest surveillance data, Zyra looked at him with a faint smile. "You have a gift," she said quietly. "Not the artifact, not your abilities, but your mind. Humans underestimate themselves. You are proving that wrong." Kale felt a surge of pride, tempered by caution. He knew the Empire would not wait for them to act. Every moment of delay increased the risk, yet he also knew that rushing would be disastrous. Strategy required patience, observation, and timing. Finally, the moment came. They identified a weakness in the Council's security. A routine gathering that left certain areas of the palace lightly guarded, a system of communication that could be intercepted and manipulated, and a faction of the Council secretly dissatisfied with the Supreme Commanders. Rule. Kale and Zyra prepared to act. As they moved through the hidden corridors, Kale felt the artifact thrumming softly against his chest, guiding him, sharpening his senses. He could anticipate every guard's movement, every camera's sweep, every electronic signal. It was as though the palace itself had become transparent to him, its secrets laid bare. Yet he remained cautious. Confidence without vigilance could be fatal. They reached the council chamber, a massive room where the Empire's leaders gathered in elaborate ceremonies. Zyra whispered instructions, and Kale moved with precision, planting devices, intercepting communications, and creating subtle diversions. Each action was calculated to expose corruption, to reveal weaknesses, and to prepare the council for a revelation they would never forget. As the council convened, chaos began to unfold. Communications went awry, patterns of surveillance faltered, and small but deliberate failures rippled through the system. The council members were confused, frustrated, and vulnerable. Kale and Zyra watched from the shadows, knowing that their intervention had shifted the balance of power, if only slightly. Kale felt a thrill he had never experienced before. They had acted with intelligence, precision, and courage, and it worked. For the first time, he realized that human ingenuity, when amplified and guided, could challenge even the mightiest empire. Zyra turned to him, her eyes gleaming. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The council will recover, the Supreme Commander will retaliate, but we have shown that the empire is not invincible. And you, Kale, are no longer just a human in their halls. You are a force they cannot predict." Kale nodded, feeling the weight of their success and the responsibility it carried. The artifact had given him power, but it was his courage, his instincts, and his mind that had made the difference. Together with Zyra, they had taken the first step toward a revolution that could reshape the galaxy. As they retreated into the hidden corridors, Kale felt a sense of purpose unlike anything he had known. The Empire was vast and dangerous, but humans were capable of adaptation, creativity, and courage beyond imagination. And with Zyra's guidance, he knew they could exploit those strengths to their fullest. The night was quiet as they returned to the chamber of the artifact. Kale placed a hand on it, feeling its energy pulse in harmony with his own. The journey ahead would be perilous, filled with uncertainty and risk. But for the first time, he felt ready. Together, he and Zyra had taken a small but powerful step toward challenging an empire. And Kale knew that the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. As he lay awake that night, listening to the distant hum of the palace, Kale understood one undeniable truth. The artifact had given him power, but it was the human spirit, resilient, inventive, and unyielding, that would determine the fate of worlds. The rebellion had begun, and there was no turning back. The days after the council disruption passed in a tense blur. Kale and Zyra had retreated to the palace's hidden chamber, yet every moment was filled with observation, analysis, and preparation. They could not celebrate their success. The Xylar Supreme Commander would soon notice the unusual disruptions. Every patrol was now sharper, more suspicious, and the Empire's intelligence network was beginning to trace the disturbances back to their origin. Kale stood by the observation window, gazing at the sprawling city below. The alien structures glimmered under the artificial lights, perfectly symmetrical and orderly, yet Kale could see the faint cracks in their perfection. Small factions of dissatisfied aliens whispered among themselves, and hidden weaknesses in the Empire's systems had begun to emerge. "They're adapting faster than we expected," Kale said quietly. Zyra joined him, her violet eyes scanning the same view. "Yes, but humans adapt faster. We do not rely solely on perfection or routine. That is why I chose you. That is why I trust you." She stepped closer, placing a hand on the glass. "We need allies. The Council may be disrupted, but it will recover. The Supreme Commander will retaliate. We cannot face him alone." Kale nodded, understanding the urgency. Their next step was clear. They had to find those who would follow, who shared the vision of a freer galaxy. But the challenge was immense. The Empire ruled with fear, loyalty enforced by indoctrination and advanced monitoring systems. Trust was rare, and betrayal was everywhere. Yet humans had one advantage the Xylars did not: the ability to inspire courage where others saw only compliance. Over the following days, Kale and Zyra reached out to sympathetic alien factions, using coded transmissions and secret meetings. Kale marveled at how Zyra's subtle influence swayed allies without force or coercion. She was a strategist of rare skill, and her presence carried authority that humans often lacked. Kale himself contributed in ways that surprised even him. The artifact amplified his awareness and insight, allowing him to detect hidden motives, subtle gestures, and small signs of loyalty or hesitation. One evening, as they prepared for a critical meeting with a faction of alien engineers, Kale felt a flicker of unease. "What if they are spies?" he asked. "What if this is a trap?" Zyra shook her head gently. "Then we adapt just as we always do. Humans have a way of turning danger into opportunity. Trust your instincts, Kale. They will guide you." The meeting was tense. The engineers were cautious, their voices low, their expressions guarded. Yet Kale and Zyra presented their vision clearly: a galaxy where the Empire's oppression could be challenged, where intelligence, courage, and strategy could dismantle centuries of control. Kale's enhanced perception allowed him to read their subtle responses, the slight narrowing of eyes, the micro-expressions of interest or doubt. With patience, reason, and confidence, they won over enough allies to form a small but capable force. Kale could feel the artifact thrumming softly, as if acknowledging his success. It did not give him the power to command or coerce. Instead, it amplified his natural abilities, his insight, his timing, his ability to inspire others. And with Zyra's guidance, they now had a small network ready to act when the moment came. Their first operation as a coordinated team came sooner than expected. A supply convoy critical to the Council's operations was scheduled to pass through a lightly defended sector of the city. Kale and Zyra saw an opportunity to disrupt it, not with brute force, but with precision, timing, and strategy. Kale studied the convoy's movements, sensors, and patrols, mapping every step in his mind. On the night of the operation, Kale moved like a shadow. The artifact's energy flowed through him, enhancing his senses and reflexes. He could see patterns in the guards' movements, hear the faintest clicks of surveillance devices, and anticipate responses before they happened. With careful precision, he disabled the convoy's security systems, creating confusion among the patrols. Zyra coordinated the distraction from a distance, sending subtle signals that guided the Allied forces. The operation succeeded perfectly. Supplies were intercepted without loss of life, and the Council was left scrambling to understand what had happened. Kale felt a rush of triumph, not from destruction, but from intelligence and ingenuity. Humans, he realized, had a way of turning thought into action that the Empire could not predict, but their success drew attention. Within hours, the Supreme Commander began tracing the disruptions back to their source. Kale sensed the heightened security, the subtle changes in patrols, the increase in surveillance signals. He shared his concerns with Zyra, who nodded gravely. "He knows we are dangerous now." "And dangerous we are. But danger is part of the strategy. We must remain unpredictable, adaptable, and relentless. The days that followed were a whirlwind of small but decisive operations. Kale led missions to intercept communications, sabotage non-lethal supply chains, and expose corrupt council members. Each success emboldened their allies and spread a ripple of doubt among the Xyler leadership. Kale felt the artifact pulsing with energy, a constant reminder of both his potential and his responsibility. Yet danger was never far. One evening, while Kale monitored a patrol route, he noticed a pattern he had not seen before. A subtle adjustment in guard rotations, a faint but deliberate increase in surveillance near one of the hidden corridors. His instincts screamed caution. "Zyra," he whispered urgently, "they're onto us. Someone is tracking our movements." Zyra's expression darkened. "Then we adapt. We always adapt. We must draw their attention away without revealing our plans. Can you do that?" Kale nodded. He understood immediately. They would need a calculated diversion, a controlled disruption that would mislead the Supreme Commander's forces. Using his enhanced perception, he identified a weak point in a nearby patrol sector, a location that, if triggered, would cause maximum confusion without endangering anyone. He relayed the instructions to Zyra, who coordinated the movement of their allies with precision. The diversion was flawless. Alarms flared in one sector while Kale and Zyra moved undetected through another. Guards were drawn away, patrols were redirected, and the Supreme Commander's forces were left scrambling to understand what had happened. Kale felt the thrill of success, tempered by the knowledge that this was only one battle in a much larger war. But the Supreme Commander was cunning, and his response was swift. Within days, he deployed an elite task force to the city, seeking the source of the disruptions. Kale could sense their approach, the subtle vibrations in the city's energy grids, the patterns of patrols shifting like a tide. He shared the information with Zyra, and together they devised a bold plan, a counterstrike that would turn the task force's own strategies against them. The plan required precision, timing, and courage. Kale would lead a small team of humans and sympathetic aliens into the heart of the city, exploiting weak points in the enemy's formation. Zyra would coordinate from a hidden command post, guiding their movements and manipulating information streams. The artifact pulsed with energy as Kale prepared, enhancing his awareness and reflexes. Every detail mattered. One mistake could mean capture or death. The night of the operation was tense. Kale moved through the shadows, guiding his team with quiet confidence. Every sensor, every guard, every patrol movement was anticipated and countered. They struck with speed and precision, neutralizing the task force's efforts without unnecessary conflict. Chaos rippled through the Supreme Commander's elite forces, and for the first time, the Xyler leadership witnessed humans and their allies operating with strategy, intelligence, and audacity beyond anything they had expected. When the operation concluded, Kale and Zyra regrouped in their hidden chamber. Both were exhilarated and exhausted. "They won't forget this," Zyra said, her voice calm but resolute. "The Supreme Commander will respond. The Council will recover. But we have proven something important. The Empire is not invincible, and humans are not ordinary." Kale nodded, feeling the weight of their accomplishment. The artifact had given him power, yes, but it was their minds, their courage, and their ability to inspire others that had truly made the difference. Humans were adaptable, creative, and unpredictable, and now the galaxy had begun to see that in action. Over the next several weeks, Kale and Zyra continued to expand their network of allies, careful to remain hidden while striking precisely where the Empire was most vulnerable. Each operation built momentum, confidence, and trust among their followers. Kale learned to anticipate not only the Empire's actions, but the reactions of their allies, guiding them toward success without ever forcing them. And yet, danger loomed ever closer. The Supreme Commander's intelligence had grown sharper, and Kale could feel the tightening noose of surveillance and suspicion. One wrong move, one moment of overconfidence could expose them to capture. But Kale also knew something else. Humans thrived on challenge, on risk, and on the chance to turn adversity into opportunity. Every danger was a puzzle, and every puzzle was an opportunity to prove their worth. As Kale prepared for the next operation, he glanced at Zyra. She stood beside him, calm, focused, and unwavering. Together, they were a force the Xylers had not anticipated. humans guided by insight, strategy, and courage, amplified by an artifact that enhanced their natural strengths. The rebellion was growing, and the galaxy was beginning to change in ways the Empire could not predict. Kale felt a surge of determination. The Supreme Commander would come for them, yes, but humans had a way of turning even the deadliest threats into triumphs. And Kale, with Zyra's guidance and the artifact's power, was ready to face whatever came next. The city below hummed with alien activity, unaware that in the shadows, a revolution was quietly taking shape. And Kale knew that when the time came, humans would rise in ways no one, alien or otherwise, could have foreseen. The rebellion was no longer a dream. It was real, and it was unstoppable. The air in the palace was tense, almost electric. Kale stood in the shadows of a hidden corridor, his senses alert to every vibration, every hum of machinery. The artifact on his chest pulsed softly, a reminder that the time had come. The Supreme Commander had grown impatient, and the rebellion's small victories had forced him to take action. Now, Kale and Zyra would face the greatest test of their ingenuity, courage, and human spirit. Zyra joined him silently, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "This is it," she said. "The Council and the Supreme Commander are gathering tonight. They do not know we are coming. This is our chance to strike at the heart of the Empire." Kale nodded. He had anticipated this moment for weeks, preparing every detail of their plan. They would not attack with weapons alone. That was not how humans fought best. They would use strategy, intelligence, and the element of surprise. Every step, every diversion, every small action had been calculated to maximize their advantage. As they moved through the corridors, Kale's enhanced senses allowed him to detect every patrol, every sensor, and every hidden device. The artifact amplified his intuition, giving him the ability to anticipate danger before it arrived. Yet he remained cautious. Overconfidence could destroy them. He whispered to Zyra, "We need to be fast and precise. One mistake and it could be the end." Zyra smiled faintly. "That is why you are here. Humans never follow predictable paths. We will succeed because we adapt." They emerged into the council chamber from a hidden entrance, the room vast and imposing. Alien leaders filled the space, their faces masks of authority and fear. At the center, the Supreme Commander stood, his posture rigid and commanding. He turned his gaze slowly, sensing the presence of intruders, though he could not yet identify their location. Kale felt the artifact thrumming, a pulse of energy that aligned with his own heartbeat. He signaled Zyra, and together they executed the first stage of their plan. Small devices placed earlier in the day activated simultaneously, creating confusion among the Council's guards. Alarms flared, lights flickered, and the Supreme Commander's elite troops moved to investigate. Kale and Zyra were already in motion. They moved with precision, exploiting every opening, every moment of hesitation. The humans and allied aliens who had joined their cause emerged from hidden positions, coordinating seamlessly. What might have seemed like chaos to the Xylers was actually a carefully choreographed series of maneuvers, each step designed to dismantle the Council's control without unnecessary violence. The Supreme Commander's eyes narrowed as he realized he was under attack. His voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "Find them! Capture the intruders!" But his orders came too late. Kale and Zyra had already disrupted the communication channels, blocked reinforcements, and isolated the key leaders. The Council members were panicked, unsure who to trust, and the Supreme Commander found himself reacting rather than controlling. Kale felt the exhilaration of the moment. The artifact's energy flowed through him, sharpening his mind, enhancing his perception, and giving him the ability to coordinate complex maneuvers in real time. But it was not the artifact alone that determined success. It was human ingenuity, creativity, and courage. Every move Kale made was guided by observation, intuition, and experience. Zyra moved beside him, her actions precise and deliberate. She communicated with their allies, relayed critical information, and manipulated the Council's perception. Her leadership was extraordinary, but she relied on Kale's enhanced perception to anticipate every threat, every reaction, and every opportunity. Together, they were a force that the Supreme Commander had never imagined, one that combined human adaptability with alien insight and technology. The battle of wits and strategy continued through the chamber. Kale identified weaknesses in the Supreme Commander's formation, exploiting gaps that had previously been considered unassailable. He guided their allies to move swiftly and silently, neutralizing threats without confrontation. Every step, every decision, was calculated to maximize the effect while minimizing risk. The Supreme Commander realized too late that he was being outmaneuvered. He had underestimated the humans and their allies, failing to anticipate their adaptability and ingenuity. He moved toward the throne, seeking to reclaim control, but Kale anticipated the move. Using the artifact's guidance, he blocked the path, forcing the commander to hesitate. That hesitation was enough. Zyra seized the moment. She stepped forward, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. "This empire thrives on fear and control," she said, her voice steady and clear. "But the people, both human and alien, are capable of choice, courage, and change. Your power is not absolute." The council members looked around, uncertain, their confidence shaken. Kale advanced, his movements deliberate and confident. He did not need to fight with brute force. His presence, amplified by the artifact and his own strategic mind, conveyed authority and strength. The Supreme Commander's troops faltered, unsure how to respond to this unexpected combination of intelligence, courage, and human adaptability. Kale's thoughts were focused, every detail of the room mapped in his mind. He anticipated every possible reaction, every move the Supreme Commander could make. When the commander lunged toward a guard to seize control, Kale intercepted, using calculated force to block and redirect without harm. The moment was brief, but it demonstrated control, precision, and the human ability to act decisively in critical moments. Zyra continued to speak, her words weaving a web of influence that reached even the most loyal council members. She exposed corruption, revealed hidden weaknesses, and inspired doubt in the Supreme Commander's authority. The room's energy shifted, the tide turning subtly but unmistakably in favor of Kale and Zyra. Outside the chamber, their allies worked in perfect synchrony. Communications, transportation, and security systems were subtly disrupted, creating openings for the rebels to act. Kale monitored the entire operation, guiding their movements with intuition enhanced by the artifact. Every ally's action was anticipated and amplified, creating a cascade of success that the Supreme Commander could neither predict nor counter. As the operation reached its climax, Kale and Zyra cornered the Supreme Commander. He was no longer commanding. He was reacting, attempting to regain control, yet every step he took played into their carefully orchestrated plan. Kale could sense the tension, the desperation, the subtle cracks in his opponent's strategy. And he knew that victory depended not on aggression, but on the display of human ingenuity and unshakable courage. Kale stepped forward, his voice calm and deliberate. "Your empire is strong, but it is not infallible. You have relied on fear, routine, and perfection. Humans and those who follow them rely on adaptability, courage, and intelligence. You underestimated what we are capable of." The Supreme Commander faltered, his confidence shaken. The council members, witnessing the turn of events, hesitated, unsure where loyalty truly lay. Kale felt the artifact's energy pulse, guiding him, reinforcing his awareness and insight. He knew the moment for action had arrived, not a strike of violence, but a decisive assertion of control that demonstrated the power of strategy, courage, and unity. With Zyra at his side, Kale directed the final moves of their plan. The council members were separated, their communications blocked, and their authority diminished. The Supreme Commander's forces were disoriented, unable to respond effectively. And in that instant, Kale and Zyra had seized the initiative. The chamber fell silent, the tension palpable. Kale and Zyra stood before the council and the Supreme Commander, their presence commanding respect and attention. "This empire will not continue as it has," Zyra declared. "It will change, guided by intelligence, courage, and justice. Those who wish to continue serving oppression may leave. Those who wish to embrace change may follow." A murmur spread through the council. Some members stepped back, uncertain and hesitant. Others, inspired by the display of human and alien ingenuity, began to nod in agreement. The Supreme Commander, realizing his authority had been irreversibly challenged, hesitated, then finally retreated, understanding that his control over the council had ended. Kale exhaled, the tension finally releasing from his body. The artifact pulsed softly, its energy a reminder that this victory was not magic. It was strategy, courage, and the unique qualities of humans amplified by insight and discipline. The rebellion had succeeded in its most critical operation to date. Zyra turned to Kale, her eyes glowing with pride and relief. "We did it," she said softly. "The Empire has been shaken, and the Council will never be the same. You have proven what humans are capable of." Kale smiled, though he remained cautious. He knew the Supreme Commander would not disappear entirely, and the Empire would seek to recover. But for the first time, he felt the true weight of human potential. They had used intelligence, adaptability, and courage to overcome a force far stronger than themselves. They had changed the game. In the following days, Kale and Zyra consolidated their gains. Allies rallied to their cause, inspired by the demonstration of human ingenuity and bravery. The Council's authority diminished, and the Supreme Commander was forced into the shadows, his influence limited. Kale understood that the artifact had provided power, but it was human courage, creativity, and determination that had achieved the ultimate result. As Kale and Zyra stood together overlooking the city, they felt a sense of triumph unlike anything they had known. The Empire was no longer untouchable, and humans had proven that courage, intelligence, and adaptability could overcome even the most formidable adversaries. The galaxy had begun to shift, and for the first time, humans were recognized not just as participants but as shapers of the future. Kale placed a hand on the artifact, feeling its energy pulse in harmony with his own. "This is only the beginning," he said. "There is still much to do." Zyra nodded, her gaze steady and resolute. "Yes, but we have taken the first step, and humans, Kale, have a way of taking steps that no one else can predict." The stars outside the palace seemed brighter, reflecting the promise of a galaxy changed by courage, strategy, and the indomitable human spirit. Kale knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges, but he also knew one undeniable truth. Humans had proven their worth, and nothing would ever be the same again. The rebellion had begun in secret, but now, with courage and intelligence as their guides, humans and allies alike had the power to shape the stars themselves. Kale and Zyra stood together, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the galaxy had entered a new era, one where human ingenuity and determination could never be ignored. He entered the throne room alone, but the princess gave him power,